Okay, so what if I told you the modern gym isn't modern at all? What if it's actually the rediscovery of this lost global system of physical fitness that's been hiding in plain sight for centuries? Today, we're going to dive into a theory that completely challenges the official history of fitness, and it all starts with one single, really weird clue.
The source material we're looking at today opens with a pretty bold promise. It says, I'm going to show you something that broke my brain. And the best part is, this whole mystery doesn't start with, ancient aliens or some secret society. It starts in the most boring place you can possibly imagine, old government paperwork.
So, our story kicks off with this building, right? It's from 1683. And all the official records, they call it a grain depot. A simple, boring place to store wheat. But there's a huge problem. The building itself, it tells a completely different story. The label just makes no sense at all.
And right here, this is the one question that unravels everything. This so-called grain depot has a thick kind of bouncy, shock-absorbing floor. It's made of a rubber composite. Not stone, not wood, rubber. So you gotta ask, why would a room for storing static bags of grain need a floor specifically designed to absorb heavy, repeated impacts? This is the first piece of the puzzle, and it's a big one.
Just look at this breakdown. The official survey from the 1600s uses this vague, almost dismissive language. Iron rings on the walls? Oh, those are just decorative. The beams on the ceiling? Purely ornamental. But modern analysis tells the real story. Those decorative rings? They can hold over 400 pounds. And those ornamental beams? Yeah, they could easily support several adults hanging from them. Every official label feels like it was designed to hide what the building was really for.
So, all right, if it wasn't a grain depot, what was it? Well, to figure that out, we kind of need to define what a gym is, at its absolute core. Not the brand name, not the logo, but the fundamental timeless stuff. Let's lay out a blueprint.
Here they are, just 5 simple things. 1, a floor that can take a beating from dropped heavy objects. 2, anchor points on the walls and ceilings for resistance training. 3, serious airflow because you're going to have people in there working hard. 4, a space for recovery, think hot and cold plunges. And finally, number 5, a system of progressively heavier weights, right? Because that's the only way muscles grow. Gravity hasn't changed and human bodies haven't changed. These 5 things are basically the DNA of a gym, whether it's 1680 or today. Okay, so now we take that 5-point checklist and we go back in time. The source we're looking at claims that these mysterious old buildings, which are found all over the globe, don't just have 1 or 2 of these features. No, they have all 5. Let's see how the physical evidence actually stacks up against our little blueprint. All right, let's run the check. The impact floor, yep, they have them. Layered, shock-absorbing composite floors. Anchor points? Check. Iron rings on the walls, bars on the ceilings, right where you'd need them. Airflow? Double check. These places have massive ventilation channels, way oversized for just a meeting hall. Recovery space? Check. They have attached hot and cold plunge facilities. And the weights? Found in the basements. It's a perfect 5 for 5 match. These buildings are gyms. But get this, the buildings are only part of the story. There's also the art from that time. You have all these artists famous for their obsessive realism, drawing people with physiques that seem completely impossible without modern weight training. Now, the official art history explanation is artistic idealization, but the source says no way. Idealization is making someone look a little nobler. It's not drawing the specific serratus anterior muscles on the side of the rib cage or a perfectly symmetrical V-taper torso. That isn't flattery. That's just straight-up anatomical observation. The artists were drawing what they saw. And here's where it gets really wild. This pattern, it wasn't just a local thing in one country. It was global. We find these exact same building designs in colonial North America, in Spanish territory in South America, all across Western Europe, and even way out on the Central Asian steppe. The exact same blueprint everywhere.
And here it is. This might be the most mind-blowing piece of evidence. When researchers measured the distance between those iron rings on the walls, they found this terrifying consistency. 48 inches, exactly. In a building in France, in a building in Colombia, in a building in Philadelphia. That is not a coincidence. Coincidences don't standardize measurements to the inch across oceans in the 1700s. This was a coordinated, planned system.
So this leads us to the central contradiction in this whole mystery. We have a mountain of physical evidence, right? The buildings, the art, the standardized measurements. But when you go looking for the paper trail, the training manuals, the receipts, the membership logs, you find nothing. A complete and total silence. A desert. And that silence, it extends to the actual equipment. If you go into museum basements across Europe, you find these objects. An iron sphere with a perfect ergonomic handle is labeled a counterweight. I mean, it's a kettlebell. Paired iron hemispheres are called architectural ornaments. Come on, they're obviously dumbbells. And my favorite, sets of graduated stone discs with standardized holes in the middle are labeled hardware of unknown function. The function is screamingly obvious, but the official labels just insist on not knowing. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. For over 200 years, this global network of buildings exists and is in use. And then, just nothing. A long, gaping hole in the historical record where all the books and letters and manuals should be. Until suddenly, in 1893, a guy named Eugene Sandow invents modern bodybuilding, and the entire world acts like it's a brand new idea. The source uses this really powerful quote to describe it. This wasn't a case of things just getting lost over time. Neglect is messy, right? It leaves scraps, it leaves traces. This, the source argues, is clean. It's a deliberate and shockingly thorough removal of every document that would explain what these buildings and what these objects were actually for. So, if the history was deliberately cut, how did it disappear so completely? Well, the source proposes this theory of historical erasure. This repeating cycle where these buildings were constantly repurposed, and their true origin story was just overwritten, again and again and again, until it was totally forgotten. And here's how the cycle works. Step 1. The building exists, but with a vague, meaningless name, like the Hall of Civic Vigor. Step 2. A new fitness movement, like the YMCA, finds it and says, wow, this place is perfect for us. Step 3. A new, plausible, but totally incorrect history is invented for it, like, oh, it was an old military drill hall. And then step 4, the original, messy records disappear, and that new, clean story becomes the only one anyone remembers. And this really gets to the heart of it, right? We're asked to believe that this is all just a massive coincidence, that a building from the 1720s, with its specific iron fittings and shock-absorbing floors, just happened to be perfect for the YMCA in the 1880s, and then for a commercial gym in the 1970s, and then for a CrossFit box in the 2000s. I mean, how many times can something be a perfect coincidence before it stops being one? So where does all this leave us? The source is very clear that it's not about providing a neat answer or some tidy conspiracy theory. The goal isn't to give this lost civilization a name. The goal is to just acknowledge the pattern and actually grapple with the enormous questions that it raises.
So let's just recap what we can say for sure, based on the hard physical evidence. The buildings are real, you can go visit them today. The objects are real, they're sitting in museum storage right now. The artwork is real, it's hanging on gallery walls. The standardized pattern is real and it's measurable. And the silence, that complete lack of documentation, that is also a very real and a very, very strange piece of the puzzle.
This quote from the source just reframes the whole problem perfectly. At what point does labeling something unknown or of unknown function stop being an honest admission of ignorance and start being a choice? A choice not to look deeper, not to ask the really uncomfortable questions that all this evidence demands. And this is what it all boils down to. The buildings themselves are asking us questions. That rubber composite floor from 1683, what was being dropped on it over and over again that required it to be shock-absorbing? The art shows us bodies that just shouldn't exist according to our historical timeline. Bodies that could only have been built with a dedicated plan, with progressive resistance. So what were those people actually doing inside these global halls of fitness? And that's the final haunting question. These buildings, they represent a massive investment of time, resources, and knowledge. The people who designed them, who standardized their measurements across entire continents, who understood the need for impact flooring and recovery protocols, what did they know about physical culture hundreds of years before its supposed invention that has been completely, totally erased from our history? That's the question this whole thing leaves us with.